When two of my tractors vanished overnight, I thought it was a random theft. Turns out it was war, waged by a smug HOA queen named Karen who decided my land should bow to her rules. But she stole from the wrong man, and I was about to dig up her empire one shovel at a time. It started like any other Tuesday. Coffee. Silence. The hum of cicadas already starting up, even though the sun had barely cleared the horizon. I stood on my back porch, coffee mug in hand, admiring the way the early morning light caught the hood of my workhorse Kubota. Parked right next to it were my two other machines, my mini excavator and the John Deere front loader. I'd spent years collecting those machines piece by piece. Some guys collect cars. I collect things that dig, haul, and shape land. They were my tools, my companions, and if I'm being honest, my pride. My property stretches out behind the last row of HOA-regulated homes like an outlaw territory, untouched by their neurotic rules about mailbox colors and shrub height. I bought it that way on purpose. Just under 7 acres of freedom. No fences, no flags, no neighbors peeking over hedges with measuring tape. At least not officially. That freedom, though, had started to itch. A few weeks ago, I'd noticed a woman walking by a little too slowly. Short blonde bob, clipboard, a suspiciously expensive yoga outfit for someone who clearly hadn't broken a sweat in years. Karen, president of the HOA that governed the neighborhood adjacent to mine. We'd had our first brush about a month earlier when she marched up my driveway and demanded I cover the unsightly rust bucket, pointing at my freshly painted skid steer like it was a corpse rotting on her front lawn. I told her quite politely that my property wasn't part of the HOA. She told me less politely that it should be. So when the first note appeared in my mailbox, typed in a suspiciously shrill font, "Please remove machinery from public view for the aesthetic harmony of the neighborhood." I laughed, tossed it in the fire pit. The second note, bolder, with veiled threats of code violations. I ignored. By the fifth, I started keeping them in a shoebox, labeling them Karen's love letters. Still, I didn't think much of it. HOA people love to bark. What could she actually do? Turns out, more than I thought. The morning everything changed, I came out with a refill of coffee and froze halfway down the steps. My yard looked wrong, not trashed, not vandalized, just empty. My Kubota, gone. So was the John Deere. Only the little excavator was still there, oddly untouched. For a second, I thought maybe I'd moved them. Maybe I'd parked them out back or under the awning. But I knew, no, felt, that gut-sick certainty. Someone had taken my damn machines. I dropped the mug. The sound of ceramic shattering on concrete didn't even register as I bolted down the yard like someone chasing a dream that had already packed its bags and left. Locks intact. No signs of a break-in. Gate chained like I'd left it. No broken glass, no footprints in the gravel, just gone. I called the county sheriff. Took them 45 minutes to show. One of them, Officer Dean, rubbed his jaw like the weight of my problem was making his beard itch. "You got any cameras?" "No, just me, a porch light, and good faith in humanity." That earned me a sympathetic grunt. Useless. "Could be some kids," the deputy offered. "You know, joyriding." "In a tractor?" I snapped. He shrugged. "Meth makes people weird." They took my statement, wrote a report, promised to call if anything came up, and then left me standing there in the dirt staring at the bald spot where $30,000 of machinery used to sit. That evening she showed up, Karen, in a spotless white Audi, humming along the gravel driveway like she owned the place. She got out slowly, sunglasses on despite the dusk, and regarded the yard with that smug, tight-lipped smile that made me want to power wash her off the planet. "Jason," she said in a voice that always made my name feel like a disease. "I see you finally came to your senses. What the hell are you talking about?" "Well, the unsightly equipment is gone." She gestured to the space where my Kubota used to live. "The neighborhood is already looking cleaner." I took a step forward. She didn't flinch. "You know something about that?" "Only that sometimes the universe does what's right, even when people won't." "You're saying someone stole my tractors for the greater good?" "I'm saying," she purred, "that perhaps if you were part of the community instead of acting like a wild card, things like this wouldn't happen." I felt heat rise in my chest. My hands clenched. She turned before I could respond and walked back to her Audi with the kind of hip-swaying triumph you'd expect from a game show winner. That night I sat in my garage staring at the spot where I kept my tools, my wrench rolls still laid out like they were expecting company. I opened the shoebox and pulled out the letters, flipping through each one slowly. Every line reeked of passive aggression and veiled threats. But somewhere in all that HOA psychosis, I started to see a pattern. This wasn't just neighborhood pettiness. It was calculated. That's when I picked up the phone and called the only person I knew who wouldn't shrug this off. "Travis," I said, "you still doing private investigations?" "Only if it's juicy." "I think someone just stole my tractors," I said. "And I think a woman named Karen orchestrated the whole damn thing." He paused. "Well, damn, Jay, this might actually be fun." By the time Travis pulled up in his dented black pickup, the coffee had gone cold and I'd mentally rehearsed 12 different conversations with Karen, most of which ended with someone calling the cops. Again. He got out in a plain hoodie, aviators, and that signature smirk of his, the one that said he either just got out of trouble or was about to step into some. "Still no sign of him?" he asked, looking at the empty patch of yard like it personally offended him. "Vanished," I said. "No tire marks, no scratches on the gate. Locked up tight, like they grew legs and jogged out of here." He walked the perimeter, slow, eyes narrowed. "Who has access?" "Me. That's it. Neighbors don't have a key, and if anyone hopped the gate, they'd have to be damn athletic or suicidal." He knelt down by the gravel driveway, ran his fingers over the ground. "Compressed here. Something heavy rolled out, recently. And look," he pointed to a faint indentation. "Dual tires. Flatbed trailer, probably dual axle. Someone knew what they were doing. Got in. Got out. Quiet. And no one saw anything." Travis glanced at me. "They will. You just haven't asked the right person yet." We spent the next few hours knocking on doors along the perimeter road, the ones backing up to my property line. Most folks gave us the usual shrug and didn't hear a thing routine. Then we got to old man Ramirez, who lived 3 lots over in a sun-bleached bungalow full of wind chimes and American flags. He was sitting on his porch sipping what smelled suspiciously like spiked lemonade, watching a portable TV the size of a microwave. Travis flashed his PI license. "Sir, we're looking into a theft that may have occurred early yesterday morning. You happen to see any unusual vehicles on the road?" Ramirez nodded, slow. "You talking about the big black trailer with the LED strip on the back bumper? Thing rolled through here around 2:30, maybe 3. Did you see where it went?" "Turned onto that HOA side street, Oak Ridge Lane, I think. Had a white SUV behind it, tailing close. Looked coordinated, like they were protecting it. Kinda like when the feds move money." I felt my stomach drop. "White SUV?" "Yup, new. Had that snooty gleam. Could see it even in the dark." Karen drove a white Audi. Brand new. Always polished to the point it made your eyes hurt. Back in my garage, Travis leaned against the workbench, thumbing through one of Karen's love letters. She's bold, he said. Takes your equipment, then shows up and mocks you for losing it. That's psychological warfare. She thinks I'm helpless. Well, she's wrong. But it gets better. He held up his phone. Guess who just got a permit 2 days ago to move obstructive equipment from a public adjacent property for community safety reasons? I stared at him. Karen filed it under the HOA's new Property Integrity Initiative, signed it as acting administrator, used a storage company as subcontractor. Guess who owns the company? Don't say it. Derek Branson. Who? Her boyfriend, maybe more. Former city code enforcement fired 2 years back for tampering with citations. Now owns a small hauling and restoration business registered to a P.O. box. I rubbed my temples. She staged a removal like it was some civic duty. Not staged, papered, legal. She covered herself just enough to pass inspection. Technically, she didn't steal your tractors. She located public hazards. Public hazards? He showed me a scan of the complaint. My name redacted, the photo a grainy aerial shot from God knows where, showing the top of my loader and excavator with the caption, "Abandoned equipment near children's access path." I don't even have a children's path. She added one to the map. He pulled up another file. This is a zoning map she submitted at the last HOA meeting. See this line? She's trying to claim your side lot as shared community buffer zone. That's a fantasy. It's a lie. But a lie with enough fake documents stapled to it starts to smell like truth. I sat down, hard. So what now? We find the tractors, we prove they were moved under false pretenses, and we dig into Branson. If he's her errand boy, he's made other runs, and someone's gotta be paying him. That night I heard a knock, not the sharp kind that says trouble, but the quiet type. Someone hoping you're not home. I opened the door. A small envelope sat on the mat. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Notice of special HOA assessment. Due to the unauthorized removal of community hazards, property owner Jason M. is responsible for processing fees totaling $4,000. Non-payment may result in further action. I read it twice, then again, then laughed, loud and a little unhinged. They stole my tractors and now they were billing me for the favor. Karen had officially declared war. 3 nights later, Travis called me at midnight with that specific tone that told me sleep was canceled. I found your damn tractors, he said. I was already throwing on jeans. Where? Storage yard, east side. Looks like it belongs to Branson's company but leased under a shell LLC. Cameras everywhere, fencing. Whole thing's locked down tight. But guess what's just barely visible from the ridge behind the lot? My Kubota? And your John Deere. Still got your decal on the loader arm. They haven't even scraped the damn thing off. Yet. The next morning we drove out there before dawn. Travis had a drone rig in the bed of his truck, the kind that probably wasn't legal in half the states. We parked just off the access road, climbed the embankment behind the yard, and let the little buzzing monster take off into the gray sky. I watched on the tablet as the drone circled the lot. There they were, my machines, sitting in the back corner behind a row of fake-labeled crates and a half-covered boat trailer. The Kubota's paint was scuffed but untouched. The John Deere, though, it was already sporting a new serial plate welded crooked onto the frame. They're prepping it for resale, Travis muttered, or stripping it for parts. Either way, you were a day from never seeing it again. We filmed for 20 minutes, taking full video of every visible identifier. Tires, scratches, serials, even the zip-tied hose I'd meant to replace. All still there. Travis grinned. Want to make it even more fun? He launched the drone again, this time aiming it lower, and we caught a new figure entering the lot. Branson, Sunglasses, clipboard, and smug like a man who thought he owned the sun. Behind him, Karen, hair up in a perfect shell, manicured finger jabbing at the excavator like she was picking out curtains. She brought her to see the merchandise, I said, or sign off on the disposal paperwork. We followed her later that day. From the storage yard, she drove straight to the Oak Ridge HOA clubhouse, an obnoxious brick box with Greek columns like they were playing suburban Olympus. Travis stayed outside while I walked in. The place smelled like lemon wipes and too much power. A few bored-looking residents were shuffling around with paperwork, sipping coffee out of branded HOA mugs. Karen stood near the back talking to two board members, her voice lowered but her body language that of a drill sergeant on parade. I didn't approach her, not yet. I grabbed a flyer from the table instead. Upcoming emergency HOA session, expansion vote, property integrity measures. I recognized the parcel map. My land was outlined in red. Later that night, I met with Sam, my cousin, the guy I'd technically rented a room to just so he could become a voting resident inside the HOA lines. He'd been attending meetings under the radar for weeks, playing dumb, nodding, sipping coffee. "You're not gonna believe this," he said, tossing a folder onto my table. "Karen's trying to redraw the jurisdiction map." "What, like gerrymandering my backyard?" "Worse. She's got a new zoning proposal she claims is backed by the county, says your land was technically within future planned community development lines and thus falls under extended compliance. She's calling it a buffer zone. A buffer between what and what? She says between the HOA and non-compliant adjacent lands, which I guess is code for you." The folder contained scanned minutes from the last session. Karen had presented a motion to vote on including Parcel 7C, my land, under HOA monitoring for the good of neighborhood harmony. Not binding yet, but it passed preliminary approval with 3 yes votes, 1 abstain and 1 note. Needs legal review. Sam had also managed to sneak a few photos with his phone. One showed Karen pointing at the new map with a laser pen standing next to a man in a wrinkled tan suit, Branson. He wasn't just helping with removal. He was embedded. "What do you want to do?" Sam asked. "We're going to pull the string until the whole sweater unravels." Back at home, Travis got to work on a paper trail. Branson's hauling company had a dozen equipment recovery claims over the last year, all tied to areas bordering HOA zones. The same pattern: vague complaints about safety, staged removal, machinery disappears, then reappears on online auction sites 6 states away. "This is organized," he said. "Not just petty HOA bullying. This is a resale ring using the veil of compliance to grab valuable equipment. And Karen, she's giving them legal cover with HOA documents." We needed a bigger move, something they couldn't ignore, so I made bait. I hauled out my old trailer, rusty busted lights, cracked axle, and parked it sideways near the back of my property, half in view of the road. I spray-painted "Do Not Touch Dangerous" in huge letters on the side. Then I attached a GPS tracker inside the chassis and rigged up a wireless camera facing outward, disguised inside a busted floodlight casing. 3 nights passed. Then just before dawn on the 4th morning, the tracker pinged. Trailer gone. I watched on my tablet as the camera recorded a flatbed pulling up, 2 men in reflective vests working fast. One of them looked like Branson. The other stayed in the cab of a familiar white Audi. We got it all, every damn second. The footage was perfect, clean, crisp. Branson, in a neon vest with safety enforcement stitched on the back, barking orders like he was running a construction site. The fake decals on the truck matched those from the company registered to his P.O. box. And that unmistakable white Audi, idling nearby with Karen behind the wheel, sunglasses on at 5 in the morning like some washed-up Bond villain. Travis edited the footage, overlaying timestamps and coordinates, then burned it onto a flash drive. We now had visual evidence, location tracking, license plates, and the cherry on top, my property clearly marked with "Do Not Touch," which they ignored. "I hope you're ready for war," Travis said as he handed me the drive. "I've been ready since she said my land needed aesthetic improvement." The first step was filing a formal police report, not just for theft, but for an unlawful seizure of private property, trespassing, conspiracy to defraud, and impersonation of municipal authority. That last one hit particularly hard considering Branson's past employment. The officers this time didn't brush me off. They watched the video 3 times. By the end, one of them muttered, "Damn HOA's going rogue again." Within 48 hours, Branson was brought in for questioning. I wasn't there, but Travis had a buddy at the precinct who kept us updated. Branson lawyered up fast, but couldn't explain why he was on my land without a court order, or why he had a trailer registered under an alias. Even better, during a warranted search of his storage yard, the cops found several other machines reported missing. Scrubbed of serial numbers, repainted, and ready for resale. Meanwhile, Karen acted like nothing had happened. She still showed up at HOA meetings, still smiled at neighbors like she wasn't running a side hustle in felony territory. That told me 2 things. Either she thought she was invincible, or she was planning her exit. I decided it was time to force her hand. There was an emergency HOA meeting scheduled for the weekend, officially to finalize the parcel expansion vote, but everyone knew it was Karen's pet project to annex my land. Sam, my cousin, got us in. I didn't hide this time. I walked into that sterile clubhouse in jeans, boots, and a clean button-up. Half the room stiffened. Karen went pale, then tried to cover it with a tight smile. "Well," she said, voice sweet and sharp like a lemon candy. "Didn't expect a guest from outside our jurisdiction." "Funny," I said. "I didn't expect to find my stolen property in your boyfriend's backyard." Gasps, real ones. You could practically hear pearls being clutched. The board president, a tired-looking man named Leonard who mostly nodded along with Karen's ideas, raised his hand like a frazzled teacher. "Let's remain civil." "I'll be as civil as the law allows," I said, handing him a packet. "Here's the police report, full video evidence and confirmation that your safety contractor is under investigation for multiple counts of theft." Karen's smile vanished like a light switch. Leonard flipped through the documents. "Is this real?" "Dead real," Travis said, stepping up behind me. He didn't smile. "That man and this woman used fake zoning documents and falsified community complaints to authorize the theft and resale of private equipment. And they're not just doing it to me." I pulled out a printed map, the same one Karen had used in her presentation weeks ago. But this one had red circles over every property previously cited for non-compliance, including a few addresses where owners had filed insurance claims for missing equipment over the past year. I looked around the room. "You think this stops with me? How many of you had tools vanish, machinery, trailers towed with no explanation?" A murmur swept through the room. A woman in the second row raised her hand slowly. "My husband's tool trailer disappeared in March. We thought it got stolen from our driveway." Karen, red-faced, finally snapped. "You don't have proof I did anything. This is slander." I turned to her, calm. "We have your voice on HOA minutes recommending the expansion. We have your Audi on footage assisting in trespassing. We have signed complaints with your signature authorizing illegal removals." She crossed her arms. "I acted in the interest of the community. If that man had simply joined the HOA like everyone else, none of this would have been necessary." It was a perfect moment, a pregnant pause in which the entire room absorbed what she'd just said. She realized her mistake half a second too late. Leonard stared at her, blinking. Wait, are you saying this was retaliation? I'm saying he refuses to follow the rules. A woman near the front muttered, but he's not in the HOA. Karen opened her mouth, then closed it. The silence felt like thunder. Travis leaned over and whispered, "That'll do it." The meeting ended in chaos. Someone called the sheriff. Karen left in a hurry, flanked by 2 board members who looked like they wanted to disappear into their shoes. I stayed behind, answering questions, handing out cards for the detective. I wasn't interested in revenge. I was interested in wrecking the machine she'd built. And that machine, it was starting to grind to a halt. I should have known she wouldn't go quietly. 2 days after the HOA meeting imploded like a termite-ridden shed, I woke up to find a county zoning inspector standing on my porch, clipboard in hand, looking more confused than hostile. "Mr. Morgan?" he asked, blinking into the sun. "I'm here to inspect alleged unpermitted grading activity on your property." I stared at him. "Grading?" He shrugged. "Complaint came in yesterday. Said you were disturbing a protected drainage corridor." "There is no protected anything on my land. Unless they mean the ditch I dug to keep the rainwater from flooding my shed." He nodded, already tired. "Mind if I look around anyway? Gotta check the boxes." He poked around for 15 minutes, looked at my modest dirt trench, made a few notes, then sighed. "Yeah, this isn't a violation. Just looks like someone's trying to hassle you." "Sorry, man. We get these every now and then, usually from angry neighbors or HOA presidents." He gave me a tight-lipped smile. "Didn't say that." That afternoon I got a letter, official-looking with a watermark and everything. It claimed I had been found in violation of community development guidelines, referencing a set of regulations I'd never heard of. The seal at the top wasn't from the county or city. It was from the Oak Ridge Community Planning Committee, a made-up body if I'd ever seen one. I scanned it and sent it to Travis. 5 minutes later, he texted back, "Not real. Looks official, but it's HOA-stamped junk mail. Someone's flailing." Someone was right. Karen had gone from quiet sabotage to open harassment, and it reeked of desperation. She wasn't just trying to cover her tracks anymore. She was trying to bury me under procedural noise. And then came the press release. Posted on the Oak Ridge HOA website and emailed to half the neighborhood. "Ongoing threats against our community." A statement from the president. In it, Karen claimed she was the victim of harassment, misinformation, and a targeted campaign of intimidation by individuals hostile to community values. She never named me directly, but she didn't need to. She referred to a non-member with a history of defiance and unsafe property practices, accused me of illegally operating commercial equipment in a residential buffer zone, and hinted I had connections to criminal activity. Criminal activity. I laughed so hard I choked on my coffee. I wasn't even mad at that point. It was pathetic. But I knew I couldn't let it slide. She was trying to spin the narrative, and in this kind of war, perception mattered. So we countered. Travis uploaded a 15-minute video breakdown to a channel he ran for documenting civic corruption. The kind of thing that usually got 80 views and angry Facebook comments. This one, it blew up. Title: HOA President Caught in Property Theft Scam. Exclusive footage. He laid it out methodically. Footage of Branson stealing my trailer. Audio from the HOA meeting, including Karen's self-damning outburst. Documented records of her zoning manipulation attempts. A side-by-side of her press release and the actual county zoning map. By the end of the week, it had over 200,000 views and was making the rounds on Reddit, Facebook, even a few local news aggregators. HOA members began emailing me, some angry, some apologetic, a few terrified. One message stood out. "Jason, I was at the meeting where Karen pushed for your land's inclusion. She said it was already in progress and that you'd eventually have no choice but to comply or vacate. I didn't agree with it. I'm sorry I didn't speak up." Another. "She used our dues to fund that hauling contract. None of us knew what was going on until it was too late." And then, a strange one. "Check the HOA budget, the Community Enhancement Fund. That's where the skeletons are." I forwarded that one to Travis, who nearly jumped out of his chair. "She's using member dues to fund private ops. That's embezzlement, man. If she funneled money through Branson's company and listed it as improvement spending, that's straight-up fraud." We submitted a formal request for financial records under the HOA's own bylaws. Sam, as a resident, had the right. They stalled, delayed, ignored. So we filed a complaint with the state's Department of Consumer Affairs, then another with the Attorney General's office under HOA transparency statutes. And then, finally, we got a hit. A resident on the board, Clara, quietly leaked the current fiscal report to Travis. What it showed made my jaw tighten. Over $30,000 per annum paid to external consultants with no breakdown of services rendered. A further $10,000 unallocated for legal reserve, added just last month. And most damning, a line item for equipment abatement and lot clearance, billed to Mutz, Branson Asset Solutions. Clara included a note. "I can't be part of this anymore. She's out of control. I'm sorry." With that, the walls really began to shake. A state compliance officer contacted me directly, confirming an investigation had been opened. The sheriff's department requested a full statement from both me and Travis. And Branson? He stopped answering calls altogether. I heard from a neighbor that he'd packed up his shop and skipped town. Karen, however, was still pretending to rule her kingdom, still holding HOA meetings, still playing Queen Bee. But now, the bees were turning on her. The next meeting wasn't held in the clubhouse. It was outside, in the common green space, because the locks on the clubhouse had mysteriously been changed, possibly by Karen herself. Residents stood in clumps, confused, restless. And that's when I showed up with Sam and Travis. Karen tried to shut us down, demanded we leave. But Leonard, the same spineless president from before, stepped in and said, "No, he has a right to speak." So I did. I held up the fiscal report. I read the line items. I quoted the statute violations. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just let the truth burn slow and bright like a fuse. And when I was done, Karen snapped. "You're not even part of this community," she screamed. "You're an outsider, a troublemaker. You have no right to stand here and lecture me on what's best for my neighborhood." I looked her dead in the eyes. "It stopped being your neighborhood the second you started stealing from it." And that, as they say, was the beginning of the end. By the time the subpoena hit her mailbox, Karen had already lost control of the narrative, but she hadn't yet accepted that the fall was inevitable. The county sheriff's office officially filed charges against Derek Branson. Grand theft, conspiracy to commit fraud, and impersonation of a public officer. 3 felonies. He wasn't just in trouble, he was cornered. And in exchange for a reduced sentence, Branson did what rats always do when the ship starts taking on water. He flipped. He admitted under oath that Karen had orchestrated every removal, that she had signed off on forged documentation, directed him where to tow the equipment, and had personally altered zoning maps to support fraudulent HOA claims. She even used HOA funds to pay his company, hiding the payouts under vague budget lines like community safety initiatives. Branson handed over emails, voice messages, and a paper trail so detailed it could have passed as a damn instruction manual for neighborhood racketeering. It didn't take long for Karen to be indicted. Forgery, abuse of power, criminal conspiracy, and misappropriation of HOA funds. The charges stacked up like firewood. The HOA board, desperate to save face, voted unanimously to remove her from office, but the damage was done. Local media ran headlines like, HOA president indicted for equipment theft ring, suburban empire implodes. It wasn't just embarrassing, it was historic. The day of the court hearing, I wore a clean shirt, jeans, and boots. I wasn't there for revenge. I just wanted to see it all through, to make sure the system actually worked. Karen arrived with 2 lawyers and that familiar smug expression, though this time it didn't quite land. The room was packed. HOA members, neighbors, reporters. A few wore expressions I could only describe as vengeful delight. The once feared HOA queen now looked like someone hoping the bailiff wouldn't recognize her shoes. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with a sharp tongue and sharper glasses, laid out the charges and gave each attorney their chance to speak. Karen's defense was predictable. She claimed she acted in good faith, trying to restore safety and harmony to a community threatened by unregulated behavior. But Branson's testimony gutted her argument. He described her plans in detail. Showed emails with subject lines like, subject, remove Morgan's junk tonight, get it done fast. He presented an HOA budget spreadsheet with her own handwritten notes. Push vote through. Use emergency clause if necessary. Sam's cousin must not speak. When the judge asked why she targeted my land specifically, Branson said, she saw him as a threat, said if he got away with ignoring HOA rules, others would follow, said she'd teach him a lesson he wouldn't forget. The room fell into silence. Then they brought in the zoning official from the county registrar's office. He confirmed that Karen's modified maps were never filed with the county, and that any documents circulated by the HOA about buffer zones were entirely fictitious. The judge took a long moment before speaking. Ms. Worthington, she said, voice like an ice pick, you attempted to expand your authority beyond its legal limits, forged government-style documents, and conspired to steal private property under the guise of public interest. That is not civic leadership. That is calculated fraud. Karen didn't blink. She sat very still, jaw tight, trying to outlast the verdict like it was a bad yoga pose. Her sentence? 18 months probation, 200 hours of community service, mandatory restitution of damages, and a permanent ban from serving on any HOA board. Branson, meanwhile, got a 3 years suspended with time served, plus mandatory surrender of all his business licenses. The financial restitution was another sweet twist. Karen was ordered to repay every cent taken from HOA funds, nearly $40,000, plus uncompensate me for the theft and damages to my equipment, which had been recovered but in less than pristine condition. The judge looked at me as she read the final amount aloud. Mr. Morgan, your stubbornness appears to have saved not only your own property but the integrity of your community. The court thanks you. I nodded, too stunned to smile. After the hearing, a few neighbors approached me, people who had either been afraid to speak up or too loyal to Karen to question her. One of them, an older man with shaking hands, said, "We thought she was protecting us. Turns out she was just protecting herself." Leonard, the former HOA president, stepped forward, eyes downcast. "I didn't know the extent, but I let her go too far. I'm sorry. I didn't offer forgiveness, not yet. But I did nod." In the weeks that followed, the HOA underwent massive reform. Clara, the board member who had leaked the financial records, was voted interim president. She promised open books, third-party audits, and public meetings. For the first time in years, the neighborhood felt less like a gated kingdom and more like a place where people actually lived. As for me, I got my machines back. Some scratched, some dusty, but all mine. One afternoon, I stood beside them watching the sun dip low over my acres, my free acres, and felt something that hadn't stirred in a long time. Peace. And then I saw the envelope, tucked under a rock near the front gate. Plain white, no return address. Inside, a single note in typed Arial font. You may have won this time, but you're still a virus on this neighborhood. No signature, but I didn't need one. I smiled, folded the note, tossed it in the fire barrel, let her scream into the void. I'd already won. It was early autumn when I finally put the fence up. Not the kind of cold iron thing Karen probably would have approved of, but a simple split-rail cedar job, more symbolic than anything. The last post went in with a satisfying thud, and I stepped back, wiping the sweat from my brow, admiring the way the whole line curved gently with the land. It didn't say, "Keep out," so much as "This land is mine," and I like it that way. That weekend, I hosted a barbecue. Sam manned the smoker like he was auditioning for Food Network. Clara came by with a potato salad and a six-pack. Even Leonard stopped in, awkward and quiet, but holding a pie from his wife and a cooler of lemonade. I didn't turn him away. Near the garage, I'd set up a folding table with a laminated sign taped to the front. Neighborhood safety demo. How to ask before you touch a man's tractor. That got more laughs than I expected. The kids climbed up onto the John Deere while I gave mini tours of the equipment, explaining which lever made what happen, how to shift weight properly on uneven terrain. It wasn't about the machines, it was about reclaiming space, reclaiming the idea that we could share land without trying to control each other. Later, I fired up the Kubota and rolled down the property line, beer in hand, engine off. I'm not a monster. I glanced over the fence and grinned. Her house sat dark now. Foreclosure signs posted, lawn overgrown. The queen had fallen, the crown rusting in the weeds. And me? I was just a man on a tractor, finally at peace.